All right. Good morning. Welcome to this conference on reducing the threat of nuclear war. Invest in minds, not missiles. Thank you all for taking the time to join us. Though we're in hard times, there is cause for some celebration. 3 days ago, a new administration came to power in the U.S., ending a period of injustice, misinformation, and the undermining of democracy. Yesterday, the ban treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons, promoted by the community of non-nuclear nations, entered into force. This makes the production, maintenance, and use of nuclear weapons illegal and will sharply increase the pressure on the nations who continue to maintain nuclear weapons. These events bode well and indicate that we have much to look forward to. Yet the U.S. and other nations retaining nuclear weapons keep thousands on hair-trigger alert. This conference is one effort to move away from the nuclear precipice. It may be worth understanding its origins. When the Manhattan Project wound down at the end of World War II, many of the physicists relocated to three primarily research universities: University of California, Berkeley, University of Chicago, and at MIT. The MIT group included Philip Morrison, Vicky Weisskopf, Herman Feshbach, Bernhard Feld, and grew to include Henry Kendall, Vera Kistiakowsky, Randa Forsberg, George Raskins, and others. They were joined later on by Professor Aaron Bernstein, by Randy Forsberg, and by Kostas Tsipras. These physicists established an informal program of forums on nuclear disarmament, and MIT emerged as one of the national centers of this motion. Now, this was at the same time that MIT and Johns Hopkins were leading contractors for conventional weapons for the Pentagon. But at MIT, we always resisted the nuclear call. Bernie Feld helped establish the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. Henry Kendall launched the Union of Concerned Scientists. It was in meetings that included Philip Morrison, Randy Forsberg, and Kostas Tsipras that the Nuclear Weapons Freeze campaign was launched. Of course, other scientists have been important in anti-war struggles. As a graduate student at Caltech, I was inspired by the example of a great chemist and biochemist, Linus Pauling, who led the first successful nuclear disarmament campaign, the ban on atmospheric testing. Now, sadly, Aaron Bernstein and Kostas Tsipras, the last of the core of the MIT nuclear disarmament physicists, passed away last year, and we have all lost invaluable advocates for peace. But the passage passage of the Biological Weapons Convention and the Chemical Weapons Convention are testimony that nations can agree to desist from the use of entire classes of weaponry. The entry into force yesterday opened up a new chapter in the effort to rid the world of nuclear weapons. President Biden's proposal to extend the New START treaty with Russia for 5 years is a very important step. Now, for this year's conference, MIT Radius is a program of the Episcopal chaplaincy at MIT. In all those years that the physicists were running the nuclear disarmament programs, the Episcopal chaplaincy was a key support at MIT. Also a key in this program, Savina Martin of the Poor People's Campaign, Cole Harrison from Mass Peace Action, Brian Garvey, Amar Ahmad, Alec Neely from Mass Peace Action, Yelena Elliott from the Institute for People's Engagement, and Rachel Weinstein from MIT Biology all played key roles. The conference really is the product, is a coalition of sister organizations, all of whom contributed people and speakers. You see the list here. And this group is going to continue. Instead of reconstituting an organizing committee each year, we're going to operate as a continuing kind of nuclear disarmament coordinating committee. Special thanks to Peter Norris and Amy Rugel for financial support for this effort. Now, in order to really make progress on nuclear disarmament, we're going to have to extend beyond that demand and be clear that the weapons programs bankrupt the civilian programs our people desperately need. Savina Martin is going to step forward and talk about this need for a broader social movement supporting nuclear disarmament. Savina, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And on behalf of our co-chairs, Reverend Liz Theo Harris and Reverend Barbara, I serve as a tri-chair for the Massachusetts Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. So in the early 20th century, roaring inequality and the Great Depression had brought about mass unemployment, hunger, and homelessness. Millions of people demanded government action to secure jobs, labor protections, and the general welfare. Now, some decades later, the Great Society of the 1960s reshaped the federal budget. It reduced military spending and increased funding for social welfare and entitlement programs, created Head Start and established Medicare and Medicaid, and passed the National Environmental Policy Act. All of these programs redefine the roles of government and harness the wealth of this country toward the needs of the poor. This did not happen haphazardly, but was brought about by the power of the poor and people taking action together, like the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival over the past several years, along with all of our partners. Now, we know militarism and violence are the hallmarks of US policy at home and abroad. From war to mass incarceration and beyond, these policies all amplify poverty, and it takes on an enormous toll on this country and its people every day. The economic and social costs of poverty and the injustices of systemic racism, militarism, and ecological devastation are unsustainable. So the United States has the wealth to end these interlocking injustices, but the political will is lacking. Perhaps now, with the new administration, the poor can get somewhat of relief, and over time, the load of poverty can be lifted from the bottom so that everyone can rise. We continue to pay the economic and social costs of endless wars. And this is why we are organizing among those most impacted by these injustices, to compel this country to take action together and fight poverty, not the poor. So across the country, we have witnessed poor and low income people, moral and religious leaders, advocates, progressive economists, and public health experts hold the agenda as necessary for the true healing of the nation. And lastly, indeed, the pre-existing problems of poverty, economic insecurity, and systemic racism, combined with the gross impact of COVID-19 on poor and low-income people from Appalachia to Alabama, Michigan to Mississippi, California and the Carolinas, and Massachusetts, necessitates a bold and moral and constitutionally consistency. That we have to have this consistent agenda that can heal the great wounds in the body and soul of America. And now I'll just pass it over to Jonathan. Thank you.